Welcome to the UPoker Academy Poker Lecture Series designed to make you a better poker player. Right now we're sitting at a 25-man multi-table tournament. This is going to be in our Tournament Poker Series focus. And let me start by closing out everything else that I'm doing. So we've got Ace-2, we've got a free flop here, we're just in small blind. So we're getting pot odds, we're getting 10 to 1 to call this. With 10 to 1, we only have to have a 10% equity to call. Ace-2 suited definitely has 10%. So we do call. And here we're hoping to flop a two-pair type hand. We don't really like the ace. If just the ace comes, we'll play it, but we won't be very confident in it. But we're really looking for that flush. And since we're in the early stage of the tournament, we are going to play a relatively loose selection of hands. We've got 50 times the big blind, but what we're looking to do is two things. We're looking to preserve our stack and increase our stack. So what if those have been two hearts there? Well, the opponent bet 200 and we'd be getting 5 to 1, or actually 7 to 1 on our money, so we would have called that. But had they bet 3/4 pot or something like that, it might have been a place to find a fold. You want to definitely make your drawing hands when you're given the right price to make them, but when the equity is minuscule compared to the risk, and in that case it would have been 1/10 of our stack, then you probably don't want to get involved in them. So we're just going to try to talk through some of these hands. Right now we've got Ace-5 suited, and that might play great in a very deep stack cash game. This table looks pretty loose, but in this case we would be getting about 6 to 1 on our money, but we'd only have 4,200 or 4,400 to go once we hit our hand, so we wouldn't actually have a chance to bet and build a big pot by the river. If we did flop something, we'd definitely be able to get our stack in, but the difference is our stack is not 10,000 or 20,000 chips, so our implied odds are significantly less than if we had a deeper stack. So we're going to be folding hands like that don't have much of a chance to flop anything. While we might play that in a cash game, again, this is a tournament and stack preservation is one of our key priorities. One of the interesting things to note about stack preservation is that, say we did get pocket aces, and pocket aces are a great hand in a tournament, and let's say we doubled up with pocket aces. When you double up, would you rather double up with 5,000 chips that you started with and have 10,000, or would you rather have called a few hands, let your stack fall down to maybe 3,500 to 4,000, and only double up to 7,000? That's a 3,000 chip difference. That's why it's important in multi-table tournaments to have a stack that is as big as the other stacks at your table. And for that reason, stack preservation goes a long way to making sure you have enough chips when you do have a double up hand that you can maximize your equity there. So here, two-handed, I think if I was Tim there, I would have bet after he checked the turn. I'm not seeing him have much of a hand, and he could have taken that pot down with a bet on the turn. In this case, he opted to check the turn. This would be a definite bet on the river if he didn't have anything. You're going to be folding out lots of hands like Jack High, Queen High, King High. So you're going to bet and take that pot down. The reason that we're bluffing, even though we rarely like to bluff in tournaments, as we talked about in Tournament Poker 101, the reason we're going to bet at some of these very high probability pots is because they are very low risk. Our bet is half the size of the pot. We're going to take down that pot 60, 70, 80% of the time, and we're going to build our stack like that. So here with the 9-9 king, this would be a definite fold for Sphinx. Even if he had a king, I would probably fold there. The difference is that once you have another player calling, they're saying, you know, I've got a hand, and this bet out on this flop generally means they've got a hand as well. So you've likely got two people with hands here. Not liking the raise by Terex unless he's got the 9, which he does, which makes it a fine play. I would have most likely raised on the turn there, just because you have a lot of draws that are still out. And by raising on the turn, you can make value on the river when you bet a large bet on the river. So that would have been a turn raise for me. It also helps to disguise when I've got, say, a Jack Queen of Diamonds there, and I've got 13 outs or something, and I still make a raise. So I would have raised from the turn there with the 9. And an overbet to the pot and a call. These players are clearly aggressive and loose, and with an overbet and a call there, we expect to see either two very strong hands or one of these players getting out of line. Whenever a player gets out of line, we target them going forward. And a final bet on the river, about a third of the pot, and we see a jack and then a bottom pair with a 7. So Terex is definitely loose and maybe even passive. So we're definitely going to be looking for top pair type hands to play against Terex. And we're going to look for those hands, and when we get them, we're going to exploit them for all the chips we can get. So the ace-2 suited again, we didn't flop anything. This is just going to be a check fold. Again, Terex calling there on a very, very drawy board. Very loose passive play again. Now, Iconic might have been bluffing on the flop, but knowing that he's up against a loose passive player, the bluffs should be leaving his range completely. If he does bluff this river, I think it would be a big mistake, even though it is a very bluffable board in most cases. And in this case, he opted not to bluff the river, and Terex did have a low pair. So well played on Iconic's part not to make the mistake that Annie did with betting into a calling station. So with the Jack-2, this is a standard stack preservation scenario. We're just going to fold this. We're not even going to complete the small hand. Oops. And we see Terex raising. Now it's going to be interesting to see what kind of hands he raises with. This can be valuable intel. A bet out, a donk bet, about a third of the pot, and a raise from Terex. So generally when a calling station starts betting, that's a sign to back off. Anytime a player plays differently than his normal style, that usually indicates a different hand than they normally have. So in this case, I would put Terex on a very strong hand, given that he's raising and betting as a calling station. So the Queen Jack on the button is generally a playable hand. We're going to have to see how the play develops. We're likely going to, we're going to raise here. And we're doing this to isolate Terex with a weak hand, because we know he plays, King 7, Queen 7, things like that. We've most likely got him dominated if he's got a Queen or a Jack. And if he's got something like King 7, he's usually going to miss the flop. So we are going to raise and isolate him. And we are successful at that. We do flop a straight draw. So this is just going to be a standard bet. Even though he has a calling station, we do have odds to bet this flop. Has a semi-bluff, and he calls, and we don't turn anything, so this would be a huge mistake to bet again on the turn. He likely has a king or a 10 or a 7. And there's not going to be any value to betting on the river because he's going to call with anything that beats us. And in this case, we do have the best hand. He only had a flush draw, but we were absolutely right to raise to isolate, given that he called with 9-2. So again, this is probably going to be a limp from Terex, and it's going to be a raise. Well, it's still going to be a raise, but ideally we would have raised to isolate him. In this case, we're just going to do a standard raise to 3 times the big blind. So 10 flatting here likely is a suited connector or a weak ace or a pocket pair, which hits a lot on this flop, but we still have to bet out about half pot, and we do that because of the times that he does fold. We make a big chunk of change. So the 10-3 is just going to be a fold. You'll notice here, just through basic betting and stealing pots, we've already run our stack up to 6,200 from the initial 5,000. And worth noting is that 4 players have already busted out on other tables, so we are now 21-handed. And I'm going to take a look at the tournament info real quick. It looks like top 6 places are going to pay, which puts the bubble at 7th place. And this is a pretty fast tournament. The blinds go up. I'm going to raise this. The blinds go up every 6 minutes, and they do go up pretty fast. So we're raising the jack queen suited essentially for one reason, because Terex is in the blind and we know he's going to call. But because we have a relatively good hand against the other hands in the pot. So we are going to have to go in and bet this about half pot. Even though we are betting against a calling station, a c-bet is usually a good play, especially since we've got overcards. So we are going to check here. And we don't like that 6-4 bet on the river. We think that hit a good chunk of his range. So we are just going to check, and he either had us from the flop or got us on the river. And he had us from the flop with the ace-king. Could we have bet that river and got him off the ace-king? It's likely. The reason we didn't is because the fact that he just called there, I didn't see ace-king being in his range. I didn't see any strong aces being in his range. So I didn't think I needed to fold him off aces. Had I bet, he likely would have folded and we'd have picked up another stack. So with the ace-4, we're just going to check and try to catch something. And we do catch something, and it's a strong enough something at second pair top kicker that we're going to have to bet to fold out the like 6-7 and jack-7 and ace-6 and all the other hands that have outs on us. So we do bet and we get called by the calling station. This is going to be a good time to bet again on the turn and then check through the river, because we're not certain he has a hand yet, but we do have some outs if he does. Those were not our outs, so we are just going to check here. We hope to see a 3 or a 4. He did have a 3 and he did catch his out, so we played that perfectly given our opponent's actual hand. So we've got Queen 10. Terex is often raising when he's in late position, but not in this case, so we are just going to complete against these two players and see a flop. And we do flop a draw, but since we don't have top pair, I'm not going to bet out here. This is going to be a fold. He's bet enough that we're not getting odds to continue playing. If we were deeper stacked, we might have a call there, but simply put, he bet 2/3 of the pot, and we needed him to bet half pot or less to continue. So let's talk about 10-5 suited here. If we raise, we're raising to isolate Terex, which I think actually might be a reasonable play here. Let me raise a bit more than that. Normally we would be raising our button against these two players with any two cards, or a good chunk of our cards. But in this case, Terex did come in, so I think we can raise and isolate him. So we've been re-raised. Let's see what Terex does. And we're being asked to call 620 into a $2,500 pot. So that means we're getting 1 to 4. We need to be 25%. I think we do have equity to call there, given that if we flop anything reasonable, we are going to put our stack in. We did flop something, and our stack is going to go in. I would have expected a larger bet here, but we really don't have a choice. We just need to go all in. Yeah, we do take it down with our 10. Of course, sometimes he has the ace there, but once we call and flop that hand, we can't get away from it. So again, we're going to raise to isolate Terra. Now that he is getting to be a little bit of a bigger stack, and we are a bigger stack, we have more equity if we do have a hand like 8-6 to get a bunch of chips in when we have our hand. So again, raising to isolate, he does call. And he very rarely hits this flop, so we are going to bet out enough that we think he's going to fold. And again, he calls, but we do turn a great hand. We turn the straight and flush draw. I think we have equity for another bet here, given that we have so many outs, and that it's very unlikely he has the 10. He does raise, though, and we have equity to call. And we do hit the flush, so we are getting it on the river. And we're hoping we don't look at 10-7. And we do just look at the 7, so that's how we play a strong drawing hand and stack a fish. So these two we're just going to fold here. So on the last hand, let's talk about that a little bit. He raised with second pair on a paired board. That's not something we expect from a calling station. It was very out of character. We expect when he raises there, he's got a 10. Maybe we were wrong about the calling station. Maybe he's still loose passive but can't get aggressive, so he's just generally spewy. And we do run up against a lot of opponents that have that style. So here we've got two short stacks. This might be a place to shove all in, but given that we are in the big blind, we can just check and catch a hand before we do that. So this is going to be definitely an all-in here with the top pair. And we get it in against bottom pair. And he does double up off us, which is fine. Nothing much we can do about that. So the deuce 9 out of position is going to be unplayable, really, no matter what happens. So we're just going to fold that, not even complete. Again, this is a stack preservation strategy. I think had we gone all in pre-flop on the last hand, Terex might have found the odds to call. Iconic might have even called, so there's always that potential. Given that Iconic limped before the flop, he could have limped with a strong hand like an ace or something like king queen. More likely he would have raised those hands. Given that he limped, he probably had something like jack 9 or jack 8 or 8-7. But Terex, he probably would have called with king 2 there, and we would have gotten it in behind instead of waiting and getting it in ahead. So here, check down to the river, and a bet on the river from Terex. And he does have the straight. We expect to see a strong hand there. That river bet, we expect to check from a generally loose passive player there, unless he's got a very strong hand. So Terex has managed to nearly double up again. Jack 6 is getting a little bit weak to raise there, given that we'd be raising into somebody with just 7 big blinds, but we're raising through somebody with 15 big blinds. It makes us at risk of being re-raised on by either player, and we don't like either player re-raising us with Jack 5. If Iconic was to re-raise us, we would call, but raising through Tim is too risky to get at Iconic. So Jack 8 is going to be a reasonable hand to raise and isolate Terex with. Given that we have a good understanding of his play, we hope to raise and isolate him more often. And it is successful. And we don't flop anything, but this is a very scary hand for him, so we are going to go on and bet out half pot. And he raises us, and we're just going to fold. He clearly had the ace or the king here. We are currently down to 18 players playing. That makes us three tables going at 6-handed each. The top stack is a relatively aggressive fish with 1,600 chips. He's at table 2. Also at table 2 is a relatively tight player who's generally a good poker player. He's 11-4-05, and then we're a third chip leader with 11-1-3-0. Then at table 5, the other table, is a player with 10,000 chips. So the top 4 all have over 10,000 chips at this point, and the rest have under. The lowest stacks have 780, 1050, and 1400. So with the 7-6, probably strong enough to raise here, given the Terex is in the blind. And we have GG also in the blind. Those are reasonably sized stacks. We're not too worried about a shove from Iconics. We're just going to call this. And we do isolate Terex post flop. Now, given that bluffing out Terex wouldn't help us because Iconics might have us beat, we're going to check until we have a hand here. Because it wouldn't do any good. There's no money to be made by bluffing. So the Queen 7 up against a raise is going to be a clear fold. Iconic's going to get it in, GG's going to get it in, and Terra's going to get it in. So we have a three-handed all-in here, or very close to it. We expect to see this all-in right here on the flop. And GG is going to call. And it looks like Terex is going to double up with a flush draw, triple up even. So now we have a, he's going to be the second largest stack. And we had two more players bust out, so we are at 16-handed. And we are the second big stack at a table with a fish, so in a great position here. So the 3-7 we can afford to complete. We've got enough chips here, and we've got the fish in the pot. So we are just going to complete here and try to flop a hand. We flop a draw, probably not the kind of hand we want to bluff into two players, especially a blind, and a player who plays a very wide range. And we do hit the miracle card. We now have a straight and a flush draw to back up. So we're going to bet pot and try to get as many chips in as possible. I love that card on the river. If he did have something like 2-3 where it was had the lower straight, oh, that actually didn't help him. But if he did have something like an ace or an ace-5 or an ace-6, he loves that river card. So we do pick up 1,800 chips there. Now, normally this would be a consideration to raise and isolate. 4-9 is generally weak to do that with anyway, but the real danger is raising into somebody with just 1,500 chips. They may find a call with a lot of hands. So we've got the big stack joining our table here. I've played against Kraz before. I've got a pretty good understanding of his style. He generally stays out of my way, but he gets pretty loose at times. So a very small bet from Tim on the turn. Curious to see what he did that with. And a very small bet on the river. Maybe a weak pair. He actually does have a strong pair with a draw. I would have bet significantly more on that turn. And with the ace, we are going to raise with the Terex and the blinds. And again, we don't like this flop against a calling station, but we do have to bet. We are going to be c-betting 100% of our hands in a tournament. So we actually like the 8-queen combo. If he did have a 3, well, he's bet into us, so that's no good to play. If he did have a 3, he's been counterfeited there. Most likely he had a queen or an 8. No value in a bluff here against Sphinx, who would really jam with any two cards. There might be value in a bet here. because we're definitely not going to win if we don't fold some people out. And we do catch the 3 on the river, so we don't have to beat Jack 10 or any draws like that. He does that Ace Queen and did not raise it, so definitely passive player. We couldn't have seen that coming. There's nothing we can do about that, so it's okay. Notice how we're being involved in lots of pots with Terex, and so far he's won most of them, but we are still getting involved, which is a good place to be. So the 4 Queen, we're heads up. Definitely can complete here. We don't expect him to raise our complete very often. Gonna go in and throw this out. He seems pretty tight. Generally against a tight player, you're gonna just bet any flop, and we do, and we take it down. So the Ace 4 is going to be playable against the 2 big stacks. Terex will limp, and we will raise to isolate. Actually, Terex raises, and we're going to fold. Our value there is getting it raised ourselves so that we can dictate the size of the pot. But with Terex raising, he might have a very strong hand, and we don't want to get involved against really strong hands. The reason we isolate is because he usually has a weak hand. So here we've got Sphinx in the big blind. But we've got a great hand, so that doesn't scare us at all. We are going to get it in here against the 10-9. And we are going to take it down. So we are now playing 13-handed, top 6 payout. We're at the table with the 2 biggest stacks, or sorry, no. There's another big stack on table 2, but we do have the 1st and 3rd largest stacks at our table. Some interesting limps there before the flop. I would have raised either of those hands, yet these 2 players opted to limp. So the 7-6 is going to be an easy complete. Now that it's been raised, it's going to be an easy fold. So Kraz limping relatively strong hands. If he's going to limp cold call there, he probably has something reasonably good here. And the 10 is definitely in his range. This time he didn't have it, and Terex takes down another pot. So pocket 3 is great hand in a cash game when you're very deep stacked, but in a tournament not that strong. You don't have the implied odds of catching the set. And here we have Terex jamming, so we definitely don't have equity to call there. We'd probably call there with 9s or better. So the Ace-Jack is going to be a raise against these 2 big stacks in the big blind, small and big blind. Terex does come along with us. Not a very scary flop. Going to go out and lead out here. We're probably still ahead. The 8 could hurt us. He might have had an 8 in his hand, or he could have a flush draw now, but we are just going to check. And we do have the straight now, but there is a flush out. And that's going to be a clear fold. Not the kind of hand we were looking for when we raised that, so we do just get off it. So let's go back and look through some of the hands on this 1-minute break. Particularly, I want to look at what hands were played pre-flop by different opponents. If we can find ones where somebody showed down. So we had Ace-9 and King-10 left. We had 10-9 jammed, but that player's no longer with us. We had the Ace-Queen limp by Terex, and checking and calling even when he did have second pair. We had 6-4, and 5-8 by Tim. Terex calling with the 6-4, Tim completing with the 5-8, and both of them playing with top and middle pairs. Iconic, no longer with us, had pocket queens. Terex having the ace-jack of diamonds for the flush, and he played that with a significant raise before the flop. A big 3-bet, actually. So we're sitting on 25 big blinds. We are heads up against Terex. We love the spot. We do flop top pair. It's going to be a chance to win a small pot off him. So we're going to lead out here. Unfortunately, no chips coming our way after the flop. So the 4-6, we're a little bit too shallow to complete with this. So we are just going to fold. Eight 7 is going to be fine to raise against these two players. We do get called by Kraz and we flop the straight draw, which we're pretty happy with. We're going to go and throw a bet out. If he doesn't have a king, he's likely going to fold here. He does call, which means we have a chance to win a big pot if we do catch our hand. I'm going to check here for stack preservation. I don't think he's going to fold that turn bet very often. And we're just going to check it down. I don't think there are very many hands he folds here. He did have second pair top kicker. He was not going anywhere with that. So the Jack 3 is just too weak to play. So we're currently 13-handed. We've lost some chips since we were at the top. Now we're in 10th place in chips, but still not doing too bad. We've got 20 big blinds, which is definitely enough chips to play around with. Curious to see whether he raised that before the flop, and he didn't. He just called with the Queen King. And Tim also called with the King 8. So this one Terex did raise. Notice we have some other players joining our table. That's because we're down to 12-handed now, so just 2 tables. Yeah, we've got the ace king now 5-handed, which is great for us because we are going to make a significant raise here. And 1, 2, 3 in the pot, so we're going to make this about 2,000 to go. We're out of position. We've got a great hand. We're happy just to pick up the 1,200 or 1,500 in the pot. And we do get called in one spot. And we get called in 2 spots. We've got no choice on this flop but to jam. We might get called, but we do have outs if we do. And the pot is so big that we have to go all in here, and hopefully nobody has a hand, and they both fold. And Terex does call with the 7-6, so I guess he has a couple of outs. That was a really, really bad call, so we do double up with the ace-king like we were hoping to do. And now we are the 3rd chip leader. So the Jack 6 is going to be a fine raising hand against these 2 opponents. Tim's been playing relatively tight, and I've got a pretty good beat on Kraz, so we're going to be stealing their blinds pretty often. he's getting involved here with the 8-5. In a cash game against a min raiser with these stacks, it might be a reasonable play, but here stack preservation is key. So we are just going to fold it instead of trying to hit our implied odds hands. And the pre-flop raiser bets out on the flop. Of course, Terex calls. This time Kraz calls. If you're Rico right now, you're pretty terrified of the call from Kraz. Generally, Kraz would fold there after Terex calls because he knows that Terex could have a queen or a 9. So we're definitely not betting here unless we've got something very, very strong like queen 9 or 2 queens or ace 9. Even jack 10, I would probably check and hope for the miracle on the river. So now that Rico's bet the turn, he's pretty much got to jam the river. He's probably playing for value at this point. Yikes. And the bluff there on the turn is a big mistake. Like we just talked about against Kraz, you know he's got a hand when he calls that flop. And he's not going to fold that hand on the turn. So we're still playing 12-handed. Blackbird's been sitting out for quite some time, but he still does have 6,000 chips. So he's going to take him a while to get blinded out at these levels. Two 9 is going to be a fold. Just too weak to play in really any position. And an 11 big blind jam from Rico, and a call with a 10 deuce. And he doubles up off it. So Terex is back in the running with a large stack again, now third biggest chip stack, and we're playing 11-handed. So from the start, from like hand 3, we picked out that Terex was going to be the fish at the table, and he has absolutely confirmed that through every decision he's made since. And that's great for us. So we expect to see him call here with any 2 cards he's really looking to flip. He's got the queen 4. I don't believe he's going to double up here. And 10 takes it down. Now we're going to be looking for a little bit stronger hands at this point when we're raising to isolate, even though Terex still has a pretty big stack and we've got him covered. We definitely don't want to risk a big part of our stack. We have essentially coasting chips at this point. We hope to coast into the top 6 so that we can cash, and we're going to do that by chipping him slowly. We're going to get even tighter at this point. And as the blinds, as the players drop out from 11 players to 10 to 9 to 8 to 7, we're going to continue getting tighter so that we guarantee our place in that top 6. An ace-5 here is going to be a fold. If he'd limped there, we might have made an argument for raising, but I think we still would have folded it because we have seen him limp hands like ace-queen before. And when we do raise to isolate with the ace-5, we're looking for the ace. So we're going to continue playing tight. Eventually we'll have something like pocket queens or pocket aces or ace-king, and we'll be able to play that against Terex and maybe win a big pot off him. So here we've got ace-10 suited. This is going to be a raise against these 2 big stacks. I think Kraz would have raised anything better than ace-10, so he still could have an ace, but he also could have something like king-10. So in a lot of cases we've got him dominated. We flop a monster hand, we've got the nut flush draw as well as top pair. So we are going to try to get as many chips in the pot as we can. right here, right now. And it looks like we are going to win a big pot. So the jack we don't like, especially against Terex. You could very well have the jack. Kraz could also have the jack. So Terex did check that river. I think this is going to be a good spot for a blocking bet. We want to block anybody from making a big bet on us. And we do take down a pretty big pot here against Kraz. So the 4-7 is going to be fine to complete here. We're looking to flop a very strong hand. We do flop a straight draw. Yeah, we're getting 1 to 5 to call here, so we are going to call. The 3 would be the hand to catch here. If we do catch the 8, there are lots of hands that are better nuts than ours. Now that we have the 7, we're getting 1 to 7 to call. Definitely going to be a call here. You can make an argument for raising against Terra, but with Tim in the pot, I don't know if that's such a good idea. But this is definitely going to be bet out. We expect him to call with any pair. And he does, and we take another stack off him. So now we are a significant chip leader at this table. The next biggest stack is 17,000, and he's at the other table. We're still playing 11-handed. So Tim betting into Terra. Not sure what Terra has here, but Tim almost certainly has a 9. If he's playing a 5 like this, it's pretty poorly played. He does have the 9, he does have a monster hand. Terra rivering the straight for second nuts. And that's what happens when you play gut shot straight draws on paired boards. So with the ace-king, we're probably going to get it in against Terra. We may get some hangers on from Kraz, and we do. So we're hoping to get a jam here from Terra. If we did, we'd be able to re-raise Kraz out of the pot. But Terra's going to fold. We are going to get to play heads up with Kraz. That was supposed to be a 2,000 chip bet. I didn't type it in very well. So he didn't raise here, which means I'm not putting him on any pairs. You know, he's betting 1 to 10. We're getting great odds to call this, even for just our overcard outs. You know, I can't fold getting 1 to 14 or something. So you're going to call there. We do look at pocket queen, so we save some money there by not making a big bet on the flop. And after that, we were calling basically for our overcard outs, which were all live. So we also had the outs to the straight draw to the wheel. So definitely played well on our part there. When Terex goes all in here, we have to call. We're pot committed, and we actually have him dominated. He does catch the 3, so we aren't gonna knock him out just yet. But we are playing 10-handed now, and 9-hand if Blackbird continues to sit out. We can complete with 10-7 here. We've got a big stack hand and a small stack. And we do flop a good hand, so we're just going to lead out here. And Terex getting it in with us. And he's got the same draw we do, so we're either going to split or take it down, and we do take it down. So now 9-handed, 8 if Blackburn continues to sit out. And why don't we check on the other table? Here's what's going on at the other table. Looks like we just got 2 players all in. And both are getting knocked out right now. So we're now 7-handed. This is the bubble with Blackburn sitting out. It means players are going to play exceedingly tight, if they're playing correctly, that is. So given that we're the big stack and we've got so many chips that we can afford to play around a little bit, we're going to get extremely aggressive here. We're going to make sure that nobody plays any pots with us until somebody else gets knocked out. That way we're going to chip up from 30,000 chips hopefully to 32, 33,000 chips simply by playing very aggressively. Tim here are going to come along for the ride. What I'm trying to determine here is whether or not Tim is a good enough player to realize if I go all in, he has to fold within 2 cards. I'm not certain he is, so that might put a stop in our little plan there, but not necessarily. He might have had a very strong hand there. No, it looks like Tim's not going to play along with this. So we're going to check here, hope to catch the 7. We're getting odds to call just for our 7, so we do call. We don't catch it this time. Tim managing to take a pretty big stack off us at this point. So we've still got enough chips to execute our aggressive strategy. Kraz we don't think is going to get involved with us. Probably just going to limp here, see a flop. And bet out. He does seem pretty tight. Against a raise, we're just going to fold. We are down to 6-handed now, so everybody involved has made the money. So up until you get to the bubble, you're playing tighter and tighter and tighter. As soon as that bubble breaks at 6-handed, when everybody's in the money, you start playing very loose, very aggressive again, because now the only thing that matters is first place. So we do get min re-raised there. We're getting 1 to 6 under money. We've got pocket 4s, so we've essentially got odds. We've got to be 1 to 8 to get a pot odds call there. At 1 to 6, we only have to make about 3,200 after the flop to justify our call. We definitely would have made that, so we do make that call just for the set value. So this would be the final table. We are the 3rd chip leader here. Blackburn likely going to get blinded out pretty quickly, and it's going to be 5-handed with the 5 generally strong chip stacks. So the big pot there for Rodan. Given that we haven't played with two of these players at all now, Koktos and Rodan, we need to pull back to our optimal strategy, which is betting our strongest hands, calling with our middling hands, and folding our weakest hands. We need to kind of feel these players out before we get involved. So this was raised, re-raised, and re-raised. Kraz, it looks like, is going to double up here. So Koktos definitely not afraid to put his money in. Pretty aggressive there with the big re-raise over. Essentially, it was just a call, though, because Kraz was the big stack. So Queen 10 under the gun. If we had a better idea about the players who were in the blinds, we might justify a raise there. In this case, probably not. So the Queen Jack, big blind. I think we've got a raising opportunity here against Coke. Yeah, let's go on and make this 2,400. We like our hand. It plays well heads up, plays well multi-way. Rodan calls, which is great because now we're in position. Could have had 3 streets here with the Jack, and we do get a fold. So we win a pretty significant pot there. So King 10 could be a raise here. Rodan most likely will call, and then we'll be playing out of position, which I don't like. King 10 here is also a reasonably good complete, so we don't have to raise it. In this case, I've opted to complete because I don't want to be playing out of position against Rodan. This is the same play Tim made earlier with top pair and a good draw. The weak bets, so he could very well have a 7 here. Rodan on the raise could be a big 7, could be 2 pair, could be a straight. It's hard to tell. I don't see any reason to raise the 10-3. Looks like Blackburn's got about 2,500 chips left, so he's going to be blinding out in just about 2 orbits. So we are about 35 chips times the big blind. 35 big blinds deep, that's what I'm trying to say. Definitely not hurting for chips at this point. We can sit back and wait for our hand. The games have been loose, they've been aggressive. I think at this point it would be good to pull back a little bit, not risk our hands on the implied odds type hands, but to get our money in with big pairs. And ace kings, your ace queens, ace 10 suited, you know, your top 10% hands. I mean, the meta of this table, the dynamic is really good for us playing that way because we see lots of big pots being built by weak hands, which is what we love to see when we're playing strong hands. We love for weak hands to build pots for us. So we've got the ace queen, that's what we're looking for. We're going to make a raise. We get called by Kraz. And we get called by Coke. So not the best flop for us. Absolutely massacres a ton of hands they're playing. We'll probably see 2 pair out there. Definitely we'll see a jack, maybe a straight draw. The 7's a good card for us. It gives us the flush draw to help us out. There could be an 8 out here at some point, but we're getting odds to call here. because we are drawing in a pretty good flush draw as well as the nut straight. We do hit the nut straight. We don't expect anybody here to have a flush. Cook's the only person who's bet so far, so let's go in and throw out a bet. We could find putting it all in there if we thought somebody would call it with a queen. I think we're more likely to get a call with a queen with just an $8,000 bet. And we are going to take down a pretty big pot there, making us the chip leader on the table. So a lot of what you've seen here has been calling bets with hands that allow other people to make the second nuts. That's really, really crucial to playing poker, is if we just had the queen there, it might have been a time to fold. Given that we had the ace, though, means anybody else who had the queen has now got the second best hand, which they think is the best hand because they're only losing to the ace-queen, which we have. So allowing other people to make second best hands is a huge part of our strategy. So we've got the ace-8. Blackburn, he's going to have another orbit in him. He's got 1,400 chips left, and unless we can get the blinds to go up. But the blinds just went up, it's going to be another 6 minutes before they go up again. So that's not going to happen. Here we don't have much to speak of. We've got the ace high. That's a hand that that's a flop that a lot of hands have hit with at least a pair. So we do have the straight here, but not a great straight, as 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King has a better straight, so we are just going to check it down. And with the overbet, it's an easy fold. We definitely have push around chips at this point. The Jack-9 is going to play well multi-way or heads up, so we are going to raise it. And stealing the blind is perfectly okay with me. Add 1,200 chips to our stack. Same with the ace-3, we're going to raise this if these two players fold it. In fact, we may go in and raise it anyway. So we flop a monster. We've got the very disguised top and bottom pair. Going to try to get stacks in. If he had an ace there, he would have definitely called. This time he didn't, so nothing much we can do about that. Look at the hand again. So the ace jack's going to be a raise. So what happened last hand? It was limped. by Kraz with pocket eights, and check down, bet on the river. Not much to see there. So at this point, everyone's eyeing Blackburn. They know that as soon as that line comes around, so just 2 more hands from now, they are going to have more chips than they have right now, or more dollars than they have right now. So I'm expecting everybody to tighten up just a little bit. So we're just going to check down here. We expect him to have a pair. He does have a pair. We're going to get him to fold that, so we're just going to check and give it up. So now that we're on break, let's take another look. We are at 3,700, almost 3,800 chips. Looks like the blinds are going to go to 5 and 1 in just a minute. So that's going to put us at about 38 times the blind, which is a pretty good place. We've got players here 12 times, 16 times, 18 times, and 30 times. So Tim is going to have to start making some moves pretty soon. He's only got about 60 hands left in him before he's completely blinded out. So the next couple of orbits we'll see him make some moves. Kraz, a little bit better position, but Kraz is not afraid to make moves. He's not going to get blinded out. Koktos has been playing pretty aggressively. I'm not really sure where to put him, but he's got enough of a stack that I don't think he's going to risk it against me. And Roaden, I think we're gonna get a great hand like we have now. We're gonna take Roaden's stack eventually. So it's going to make it 5,000 to go. It's enough that if Roaden calls, we'll be able to get some money in post flop. But we take down the 3,000 chip pot, which is fine with me. Adds almost 10% to our stack. You probably could have found a raise there with any 2 cards, an all-in raise, given that you're only risking 15 times, 16 times the big blind, and they're going to fold. They're just going to fold. Even if they've got aces, they're probably going to fold there. Well, actually, aces would be a clear call, but you know, if they've got something like ace-jack, they're definitely going to fold it. So the ace-8, we're going to raise. In this game, if you're sitting out, you fold. You don't just flip for it. So we're going to raise here and probably take down this pot. And if we get re-raised on, we're going to call, I think, against both players. Down to 5-handed now, still the chip leader on the table. Koktos sitting out, doesn't want to play anymore. Tim going all in, hoping to pick up this pot. Like we said, he's going to start making some moves very soon. This is his chance. He does get called by 6-king. He only has the queen 7, but looks like he is going to double up off it. So a weaker hand than I would have shoved there, and definitely a weaker hand than I would have called there by Roaden. Koktos back in. And a good spot to just complete. You know, the pot's now big enough relative to the stacks. If we were to flop the ace, we'd be able to get their entire stack or a good chunk of it just by betting out. So really no value in raising there. Getting 1 to 5 on our money. We probably have 3 outs here. We're about 6% to win. You know, we're just we're not getting the odds to call there. If he's got any pair, then we'll beat. I'm going to complete with a 3-6 to play heads up against Tim. Pretty confident in heads up, and I'm confident that he's going to fold a lot of the time when I bet out on the flop. Though it looks like he's decided to play back at me. This is the second time that he's done that, which is great for me because that's a huge overbet. So I'm not going to play the 6-10. Still looking for stronger hands. Everybody else is so short. So right now we've got enough stack that if there's somebody else with 40,000 chips, you know, we could play around with some suited connector type hands, but nobody else has that. So our effective stacks are actually much lower, 15 to 23 chips at the max, 23 times the big blind at the max. Ooh, so the aces against the ace king, not much you can do there as Roden, and Tim's going to take it down. So now four-handed. Interesting play there for Tim with the just a jam instead of a smaller raise, trying to hook a player who's got something like 6-7. He just decides to put it all in. Normally he'll just pick up the blinds, but this time he did pick up a player who had the ace king. Very rare that you see that, but it worked out for him. The ace-10 suited, great hand here in the big blind. Kraz might shove pretty loose here, and he does, and we are going to call. This time he's got ace-king. We've still got outs to the 10 and out of the king. And it looks like we are going to split the pot, so unfortunate turn of events there for Kraz. So Tim sitting out now. I think we're going to call here, given that Tim's going to fold. We could have hit a hand. We didn't in this case. And we have very few outs, if any. If we do hit a 9 or a 7, we could easily be dominated. Or we could have a bigger pocket pair than us. So we're just going to fold that, let him have it. The 3-4, given that we're only shoving into one player, definitely a shove here. And we are going to have to call this. Unfortunately, we're going to be behind, pretty significantly behind. So let's tighten back up till we get another spot that's as good as that one. Tim's still sitting out, 44,000 chips, so definitely going to make it into the top 3, probably the top 2. Hopefully we'll get it heads up with just me and Tim. He'll still be sitting out and we'll blind him out. So when you do have a player sitting out, it actually makes every hand you play more valuable. So how this works is his money is basically free. He's not risking, he's not offering any risk to us, but he still has to pay the blinds. So the original idea that we mentioned was stack preservation versus making money. It makes stack preservation a little bit more valuable because as long as he's sitting out, you know, we have more chips than we seem to have because sometimes we're going to win pots in which chips are involved. So we're going to play a little bit more conservatively. Especially since we are now no longer the larger stack, but more to the point because Tim does offer some value to us to just stay involved, just stay in the pot a little bit longer, in the game longer. So Kraz taking down another big pot here with ace-queen, and now we've got the ace-queen. So just going to take that down for free, and that's why Tim offers this value, because he could have had pocket aces there, but we'll never know. I don't really see any value in raising the Queen 8 here. We're playing just 18 big blinds or so deep. Not really a lot of room to maneuver when you're that short. So it looks like we've got two players sitting out now. And there would be value in calling that if we weren't in such stack preservation mentality. But we are trying to preserve stacks. We are trying to just take a couple of blinds here and there. So here we definitely have value to complete, given that he's folding, we're getting 1 to 6 on our money, and we do flop a straight draw. So we're getting odds to call here. Not much help from the queen. 5,000 into an 8,000. Unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to say goodbye. Had we hit the miracle 2 or the 7 there, we would have had probably a double up situation. So you'll notice our stack is trickling steadily downward, which is okay, because in tournament poker you just play the hand you're dealt. You can't force your stack to be at any specific size. What you can do is play all stack sizes effectively. And so what we're doing here is, at this stack, we're looking for big hands that we can raise and re-raise with and get all in with and double up off of. Or we're looking for our stack to trickle down where it's 8 big blinds, 7 big blinds, and we can start making those auto profit all-in moves with something like King 5 against Kraz, because we will be heads up against Kraz with Tim sitting out, or even against Kook. So this might be a good example of an auto profit all-in. Kraz most likely won't call us, and if he does, we're not risking that much. But Kook is only about 8 big blinds deep. So Kook does call us with the 2s, so we hit our jack, which is what we're looking for, and we double up through Kook. We're now 3-handed. We've got a pretty sizable chip stack, and 1 player is sitting out. So we're in a great spot here. Great spot. So really no value in betting out here. He's been calling a lot, but we may find value in a call. There's no guarantee. He's got the queen right now, so we probably have the 9s and the aces as outs. The 6 doesn't help us. I think with that bet, he almost certainly had a 6. So we're going to put in a raise here with the king, and we flop a monster. And it's a very dry board, so we're not really afraid of any draws coming in. I'm going to go and raise the king 3. Did us well in the past, and he might just find a fold here. He's going to min re-raise us. We've got the odds to call it getting 1 to 7 or something. We hit 3, not the kind of hand we were looking for, but we have to bet this. So let's put 5,000 in. The 5 doesn't help either of us, but we are going to check it down. We've got 1 pot size bet left. And here we are going to check the river. And we're looking at ace 10, so we do take it down. And we are now even with the big stack. Great hand here with the ace queen. Oof. think we have to call this. We've got such a strong hand. We're looking at ace-queen against ace-king, not a great spot to be in. And we are going to lose our stack. But, you know, with ace-queen there, you're going to have to flip against your big stack at some point. At this point, we decided to do it earlier rather than later. And Kraz is going to take it down by just blinding out Tim. So, a good game all around. We did lose what was essentially a heads-up game with the ace-queen. But, you know, at a heads-up match, you're going to have to flip sometimes. So thank you for joining us at EU Poker Academy for this tournament poker lecture. Please check us out on riskgranted.com. For more poker strategy delivered directly to your YouTube account, please like us and subscribe to us. And for more poker strategy right now, continue on to our next poker lecture by clicking here.